Hi all, I'm Jess Carter, and today I'm going to talk to you about me. I know, how thrilling. However, I'm going to talk to you about my teaching philosophy, some of my experiences, and how I've met a few of the Australian professional standards for teachers. So, where to start? My teaching philosophy. My teaching philosophy has been built and shaped by my experiences over the course of this degree. I hope that my classroom will be very open, collaborative, and inquiry based, allowing students to build their own understandings. I believe that for authentic and real learning to occur, they need to build these understandings to learn in their own way at their own level so that they aren't overwhelmed or bored. Over the course of this degree, we have learned about many theorists such as Dewey, Piaget, the Reggio Emilia approach, Vygotsky, Thomson, and Locke. The theorists that have had the strongest influence on my beliefs are the ideas held by Lev Vygotsky, Pat Thomson, and John Locke. From Vygotsky's zone of proximal development, Thomson's idea of the virtual backpack, and Locke's theory that students are not blank slates, all contribute to the overarching idea that students are individuals. They bring their own prior knowledge and experiences, their own set of beliefs, and from this they will have their own starting points. I believe we need to consider and utilise these differences as strengths in the classroom and use each student's individuality as beginning points of planning differentiated and open lessons. There have been many teaching approaches that I've had the opportunity to experience and to use or plan for within a classroom setting. From ideas behind approaches such as inquiry-based learning, the 5E instructional model, and a constructivist approach, I aim to ensure that students are given the ability and resources needed to build upon their existing knowledge and experiences in a way that is helpful to each individual. I have had many different experiences in my placements that I'm very thankful for. I've had experiences in a low socio-economic high ESL school, allowing me to develop techniques to reduce language barriers, mainly through ICT use. I experienced a team talk classroom with one teacher from Monday to Wednesday and another teacher for Thursday and Friday, allowing me to work on communicating and planning with colleagues. I experienced a bilingual school where half the curriculum was taught in English and the rest of the curriculum was taught in German, allowing me to instantly implement reflections from one lesson to the next. My most recent experience at this year's placement school is a 4-5 composite class, allowing me to develop skills to plan for a wider variety of abilities within the classroom. From these schools, I was also able to see a variety of educational program initiatives that were able to help students in a variety of ways. The first school I attended as a pre-service teacher had a school breakfast club, as many of the students were coming to school without having breakfast or were simply not attending as they were unable to bring food to school. This allowed for students to begin their day with enough energy, as well as to encourage students who were not attending to come to school. Another initiative I had the ability to see and experience was the health and safety van with Harold the Giraffe, allowing the students to learn about the importance of drug education and safety considerations we need to be aware of when it comes to medications. And in my most recent placement school, I've had the opportunity to learn about the Bridges program, which is quite similar to Reading Recovery. It was run by the teacher aide in my classroom, and in this school they also had the Start Right program, allowing students to ease into the classroom and make the transitions easier between year levels. So now, how have I met some of the professional teaching standards? During my most recent placement experience in my 4-5 composite class, I was able to explore Standard 2.3, Curriculum, Assessment and Reporting, where as a graduate I'm able to use curriculum, assessment and reporting knowledge to design learning sequences and lesson plans. So where did I start? Well, first to find out what the curriculum required of the students, and then to find out what the students already knew and any misconceptions I needed to address. From a pre-test, I was able to determine this and then develop a starting point for the lesson sequence. From the test, I found that 5 students were higher achievers, whilst another 2 students required additional support during the lessons. So what could I do about it? The higher achievers were given the same work, but the amount of steps required to complete the question increased, with these students needing to find the decimal answers. The additional support students worked one-on-one with either the teacher aide or myself. The lesson sequence began, and at the end of each lesson, I collected each of the students' workbooks to see their learning, misconceptions, and what to address in the next lesson. From each of the lessons, I was able to adjust the next one to meet the students' need to ensure real learning was occurring so that they were able to meet the curriculum requirements, and I'd also have a suitable amount of evidence to report on when necessary. At the end of this sequence, summative assessment was used and recorded to demonstrate that each student had made progress in the lessons. From curriculum documents, my knowledge of assessment tools, and knowing what evidence I needed to be able to report on, I was able to plan and implement a series of lessons successfully. An example of how I have met another standard, Standard 4.2, manage classroom activities, where as a graduate I demonstrate the capacity to organise classroom activities and provide clear directions. I feel I've been able to meet this standard in a variety of classroom contexts using a variety of different strategies. I developed and run reading activity groups, small groups, and whole classes. Students within the reading activity groups are sorted into ability levels, provided clear instruction, and given the opportunity to ask any questions and clarify any information they may have needed. Once all students were sorted into their groups and on task, a guided reading group began in a position that allowed me to overview all students and ensure they were still on track with their work, as well as provide assistance to students when needed without disruption to the reading group. I was able to set up workstations for the students and provide explicit instructions and expectations for them to complete by the end of class that was still suited to their differing ability levels. I was able to set these up in a way that allowed me to supervise all students and keep them focused and engaged with their work. Another example of how I reached this standard was during my second year placement. I was able to develop and control a small learning group of 8 students to work on their phonics and spelling awareness. Each student had a different focus point within the area that I was able to work on each student's focus with them individually. The activities were scaffolded and catered to the students, and instructions were given in written forms, verbally, and their sheets provided visual cues they could have used. These students were given activities to help them build an understanding. The students were then tested upon these words and given further guidance when needed. The students understood and were given instructions to follow in order for them to reach their individual goals. As many of us have, I've also been able to organise, run and supervise whole classroom activities. Again, done with explicit instruction and expectations discussed with the students prior to the commencement of the lesson so they all understood what the focus was. The students were kept engaged throughout the lessons and constant supervision and prompting of student discussion was used. I find that if students understand what is expected of them, the time they need to complete this in, and ensuring that the teacher is able to provide further guidance and keep students on track and implement discussions to guide their conversations to the correct topic, students stay engaged with the task. The next standard I have met and explored is Standard 3.2, Plan, Structure and Sequence Learning Programs, where as a graduate I'm able to plan lesson sequences using knowledge of student learning, content and effective teaching strategies. Throughout our careers as Deakin Education students, we're given the opportunity to plan many lesson sequences and unit plans. However, we don't always get the opportunity to implement these in a classroom to see how they'd work out. A few examples of sequences of lessons I was able to plan and implement in a classroom included a writing sequence focusing on information reports, and 2 math units, 1 division and 1 3D shapes. Whilst implementing the information report sequence, each lesson began with a modelled writing session, resulting in discussion of key aspects of the report. The sequence began with planning sessions. The students collected information about the specific animal each student was writing on, and modelled the expectation with the type of information required and the amount of information expected. Each stage of the writing process was modelled, discussed, and then students were given the opportunity to implement this in class. The students had their work checked progressively and received verbal feedback on their strengths and what they needed to work on next, which could be attempted in the next lesson. The information report then turned into a project, which the students presented their information and created an art piece to match their report. The presentations were posted on the class blog site, which allowed peer and teacher feedback as well as allowing the students to complete self-reflection on their projects. I was also given the opportunity to plan and implement 2 mathematical sequences, both division and 3D shapes. The division sequence began with a pre-test to develop the beginning point for each student. This was taken into consideration when planning the lessons. Students who were high achievers took the next step, introducing decimal points in their answers, and students who required more assistance received help with one-on-one assistance. The lessons were engaging and students were encouraged to discuss concepts to help them develop a deeper understanding of aspects such as carrying. Summative assessment allowed us to determine what the students had learned and any misconceptions they still had that could be addressed in the future. However, the 3D shapes lessons involved more hands-on based activities, allowing students to develop their understandings through experiences. Each of the lessons allowed the students to work in groups to learn about the topic, encouraging discussion of the concepts. So together, they were learning through hands-on activities and through group conversations to develop deeper understandings. From the conversations, I was able to determine their current understandings and build on these throughout the lessons. This was evident through the summative assessment at the end of the sequence, showing me what the students had a grasp on and what needed to be further explored in class to help begin future planning for them. From all of these experiences and all of the placements, I was able to come to the conclusion that students should be the main consideration during our planning. If we don't consider students' need above all other aspects, real learning will not take place for all. Learning needs to begin at a place that meets the needs of each student, which can be achieved by allowing students to develop their own understandings and differentiating our lessons so that they may be involved. From these experiences, I found that this approach can work, but in reality this will probably change year to year to meet the needs of the students within my class. Experiences have also allowed me to reach a variety of different standards, such as Standard 2.3, 4.2 and 3.2, just for a few examples. Thank you for your time. Thanks.